In a small village, there is this lazy bum named Zio, who loves nothing more than to just chill in the field all day. However, when he isn't being a couch potato, he rizzes up two dumb village girls, Rise and Fam, by teaching them how to play with his sword and use magic. Because of this, the girls thirst for him and wish they could play with his mini sausage instead. But one day, they learn that Zio will be leaving the village to attend a vocational school in the city, which breaks their hearts. This vocational school is where most young adults go before starting their lives, as it's where they discover their future occupation. So several weeks later, Zio leaves his little village for the capital to enroll in the vocational school. But while walking around the capital searching for a hotel to spend the night, he notices something strange in the city. Almost everyone is a slave, with a slave mark engraved on their bodies to prove it. The following day, Zio arrives at the vocational school and is surprised to see all sorts of nosy brats, including demi-humans, eager to discover their future profession. But the moment two boys notice Zio, they start laughing and clowning his ugly face, saying the only professions that would suit him are either a criminal or a slave merchant. But just then, a pretty blonde shuts the entire crowd up, introducing herself as Nuris, their exam officer. She instructs everyone to line up in front of the divine crystals and then explains that each student will be given a black identity card, which they will hold close to their chest, and after a few minutes, the card will turn white. Then they will insert the card into the divine crystal, and once it starts shining brightly, their profession will be revealed in their mind. Nuris emphasizes that multiple professions may appear, but they can only choose one as their main profession. As the exercise begins, the first boy completes the process and receives the profession of a knight. Everyone is impressed, since being a knight is the highest noble profession anyone can be blessed with. But just as the second boy goes to check his profession, Zio notices a kinky elf girl standing beside him and instantly starts simping for her like a fool. When it's Zio's turn, he inserts his card into the divine crystal, and the first occupation that appears in his mind is the title of a hero. But Zio thinks this profession is basically a fast track to an early grave, and since heroes barely get to live freely, he ignores the whole thing without a second thought. For his second and third professions, Zio gets the titles of Demon Emperor and Great Sage. But since both require serious effort, the lazy idiot refuses to pick either, hoping for something less stressful. However, for his last profession, he receives the dreaded title of Slave Merchant, which he immediately discards since everyone hates a slave merchant. But when he turns to see that the beautiful elf girl that he likes has also been given the profession of Slave Merchant, and she confidently accepts it, the hopeless simp immediately chooses the same profession, hoping to score some brownie points. After the profession-revealing exercise, Zio is placed in a special class where students who received rare titles, such as Hero, Knight, or Mage, are also kept. But because Zio is a worthless nobody stuck with a hated profession, he catches heat from classmates, especially two ugly girls who can't stand him. As they start bullying him as usual for choosing the slave merchant profession, the pretty elf girl from earlier, named Patty, angrily stands up to defend him, reminding them that each student should be treated equally, regardless of the profession they chose. The blonde girl instantly fires back, saying a slave merchant like Zio is never on the same level as students with noble or knight professions. When Patty asks the brain-dead girl if she really thinks a slave merchant is a lowly title, she says yes. So Patty immediately shows her identification card, revealing she is also a slave merchant, even though she comes from a high-class family. The girl is shocked, seeing that even though Patty was given 3 impressive titles such as Noble, Knight, and Mage, she still chose to become a slave merchant. Right then, teacher Nuris walks into the class, silencing everyone as she announces that she will be their homeroom teacher. She then distributes a sheet of paper to every student, and on the paper, it clearly states that classes start every morning, and only students from the special class are allowed to use the school's dormitory. Hearing this, Zio feels relieved that at least his accommodation problem is solved. But since he is still a useless brokey, he realizes he would still need money for food. So after class that day, Zio heads to the students' dorm to register. But when he gets to the entrance, he sees Patty, his crush, and immediately tries to use his best pickup line on her. So he approaches her, introduces himself, and Patty, recognizing him as her classmate, introduces herself as well. Then Zio suggests they walk into the dorm together, and Patty agrees. The moment they step inside, they meet the fat Karen receptionist, who warmly welcomes them, and then says she has already decided which rooms they will be in. She then casually drops a bomb, revealing that Zio will be in room 703, while Patty will be right next door in room 704. Zio is shocked to hear his crush will be just one door away and immediately starts sweating. But before he can say anything, the receptionist hands them their room keys and shows them to their rooms. When Zio enters his room, he's excited to see that it has plenty of space, unlike that broom closet you call a shank where even a rat struggles. But Zio is still bothered knowing Patty's room is just a door away. So to get his mind off the bizarre situation, he starts thinking about how he'll solve his broke status, and after a brief moment, he concludes the only thing he can do is get a job. So very early the next morning, Zio heads to the Adventurers Guild to register as an adventurer. When he gets to the front desk, the receptionist explains the ranking system, from Rank F to Rank S, and then adds that to receive any promotion, he would need to take a special quest that doubles as a promotion test. But Zio wants nothing to do with promotions, since the lazy sack avoids extra work like it's poison. To proceed with registration, the four-eyed receptionist asks for his identity card and a little of his blood. Zio wonders what they need the card for, so the receptionist explains that it helps prevent criminals from joining the guild. He agrees, but the moment she looks at his identity card and sees his slave merchant profession, the receptionist immediately gets offended. She turns to Zio and coldly tells him that in all her years on the job, this is her first time meeting a slave merchant. Then, in an angry tone, she starts narrating her tragic backstory. She explains that her family was so broke they couldn't even pay attention, and because of that, her younger sister was sold to a slave merchant. She adds that her sister was so young she wasn't even aware of the horrible fate waiting for her. The hatred the receptionist has for slave merchants is so obvious that when she draws blood from Zio's finger with a knife, she does it with way too much force. Zio screams in pain, so the creep finally snaps out of it and immediately apologizes for using too much strength. Just then, someone walks in asking if Zio is a new adventurer. Turns out it's an ugly girl with a bandaged face and chainsaw teeth named Melina, who volunteers to teach Zio the basics of being an adventurer. But while staring at her monstrous face, Zio gets the strong feeling that Melina is suspicious, so he immediately declines her offer. The nutcase keeps insisting, even saying she's willing to do it for free. Zio still rejects her help and says he would rather ask the guild to create a tutor quest if he needs one. But when Melina quickly signs the quest herself and excitedly says they'll be working together now, Zio realizes he just played himself. He tries to protest, but the receptionist tells him that since it's an official quest from the guild, he has no right to refuse. The next day, Zio and Patty show up at school together, but before they can reach their class, they run into teacher Nuris, so Patty immediately asks what lesson they will be having in class that day. Nuris replies that since most classes for slave merchants are focused on ethics, and they only have 6 months to study, she has decided they should learn what it means to be a slave trader through real-life experience. She then reveals that for the day's lesson, they'll be going to a real-life slave auction, and adds that if any of them is loaded enough, they can even buy a slave for themselves. However, she warns them not to reveal the location of the auction. If they do, she threatens that their names will be added to the wanted list, and they will be hunted throughout the country, which would ruin their lives forever. Since the slave auction is a top-secret event, the location is usually hidden in a densely populated residential area. When they finally reach the spot, Nuris knocks on the door, and a guy who looks like he's going through a midlife crisis opens it. Zio immediately feels a chill crawl down his spine after seeing the guy's ugly face, but the dude's cold expression suddenly brightens when he notices Nuris, and the two greet each other like old buddies. When the creepy guy asks if Zio and Patty are the slave merchant students for the year, Nuris says yes, so he welcomes them inside. As soon as they step in, the guy hits a brick on the wall, and a creepy hidden doorway pops open, leading straight to the auction. When they arrive, the secretary at the front hands them a catalog showing all the merchandise for the day. As Zio scans through it, he learns there are about 40 slaves scheduled to be sold that day. So just as the auction is about to begin, Nereus instructs Zio and Patty to sit down and observe how everything proceeds. At that moment, a bell rings, and an announcement lets everyone know the auction is about to start and that they should prepare their wallets. The first slave to be auctioned is an average-looking guy with a starting price of 100,000 gold coins. However, according to the catalog, this individual had previously clapped his master, which makes him a criminal. As a result of his terrible reputation, no one is interested in buying him, and Zio starts wondering what will happen to the guy now. But just as if Nereus is plugged into his thoughts, she explains that if no one buys a slave, they get sent to the mines, where they work until they become skeletons. So when time runs out and nobody places a bid, the slave is dragged off to the mines just like Nereus said, and the next piece of merchandise is brought in. This time, it's a beast girl with a starting price of 500,000 gold coins. The moment the bidding begins, the entire place goes wild as buyers start throwing big numbers around, which shocks Zio. However, Nereus explains that pretty beast girls like her are always in high demand, and prices usually reach 1,000,000 gold coins. The beast girl gets sold quickly, and the next merchandise is a pretty elf girl, whom the announcer calls the main attraction of the day. Her opening bid is a jaw-dropping 1.2 million gold coins, and yet the bidders drag it up to a ridiculous 3.1 million. But before the auctioneer can sell her to the highest bidder, a man stops him and announces that a stinky millionaire is willing to pay 4 million. Turns out this mysterious millionaire is Patty, who wins the bid and becomes the owner of the elf girl. Zio is stunned because he always assumed Patty was a broke loser like him, and had never expected her to casually pull out that kind of money. However, when Patty notices his shocked expression, she decides to explain herself. She tells him she bought the elf slave girl because she intends to save her. It's a duty the chief of her village entrusted to her, to rescue elves who were turned into slaves for crimes they didn't commit. To help him understand, Patty shows Zio a list of all the elf slaves she plans to save, explaining that she has no choice but to buy them legally. The elf girl, tears in her eyes, expresses her gratitude to Patty, but Patty simply tells her it's fine and promises to give her some money so she can return to their village. Later on, when the slave auction ends, Zio finally understands that slave trading isn't the only thing a slave merchant does. After witnessing what Patty did for the elf girl, he cooks up a plan of his own. Buy slaves, send them to his village, and release them after 5 years of work. Back in his hometown, his father is trying to fix up the main road that connects the village to the city, so Zio believes his idea will help the road get finished on time, which would bring development. But the problem is obvious. How is he supposed to buy slaves when he's dirt broke? Zoe reasons that he needs serious cash and figures he could make some money through the Adventurers Guild, so he heads there immediately. But when he gets to the guild, he meets Melina with her Frankenstein face already waiting for him. She says she's gathered a few quests she highly recommends for a beginner like him. But while she starts explaining what these quests are about, Zio, completely uninterested, walks over to the notice board to look for something that will actually give him the kind of money he needs. Eventually, he spots an emergency quest in a forest with a reward of 11,000 gold coins. So, he quickly checks the quest information on the table to find the exact location, and discovers that the quest is to gather 10 Kennelly leaves. When Melina realizes Zio is eyeing that quest, she gets excited that he's willing to take on such a high-ranking mission even as a beginner. Sometime later, they arrive at the mission location, and the scenery is painfully sunny. Since Zio once gathered Kennelly leaves in his village, he knows the plant doesn't grow in places with direct sunlight, so he suggests they head into the forest to look for the leaves. But Melina declines, arguing that the forest is dangerous and only D-rank adventurers are allowed to enter. Suddenly, Melina notices smoke rising from the forest, and since normal humans don't use fire in the middle of the day, Zio suggests they go check out what's happening. Melina still angrily refuses, insisting it's dangerous and saying they should report the situation to the guild instead. Zio tries to explain that there might be adventurers who need help in the forest and insists he has to go. But when he realizes the argument is pointless and draining his energy, he decides to come clean and admits to Melina that he can use magic. Melina gets all excited after hearing that, so she immediately agrees to enter the forest. As they enter the forest, trying to locate the source of the smoke, Zio takes the opportunity to gather as many Kennelly leaves as he can. But suddenly, he stumbles upon an unnatural open space, which sparks his curiosity. As he peers deeper into the clearing, he sees a bunch of goblins and realizes they're responsible for the smoke. When Melina spots them too, she starts to panic, realizing they are high-ranking goblins. But the moment she spots the fat goblin queen, built like a tank and twice as strong, she immediately tells Zio that they need to get the guild involved. But Zio tells her to chill and then asks if she knows the magic resistance of goblins. Melina replies that goblins in general have no magic resistance, but their queen is much stronger than a regular goblin. She adds that of all the stones you can harvest from goblins, the queen's stone is the rare gem that earns an A-rank reward. Zio thanks her for the useful information, but when Melina demands to know what he plans to do with it, he confidently states that he's going to wipe out the goblins and pick up their magic stones. Melina immediately protests, saying it's dangerous, but Zio insists on going ahead with his plan and tells her to stay back if she's too chicken. As Zio unleashes his magic black arrows suddenly start piercing the goblins, and in the next moment, all the lesser goblins are wiped out, leaving only the queen. This time, Zio decides to boost his magic, and as he lifts his arm to the sky, he fires black arrows that completely erase the bloated queen from existence. The goblin queen's stone drops to the ground, and when Zio picks it up, he notices Melina staring at him like a fool in love. When he asks what her problem is, Melina excitedly says she's impressed that he can use dark magic, then vows to follow him for the rest of her life. Shortly afterwards, as they head back to the guild, Zio presents the bag of Kennelly leaves to Alina, the receptionist. But when Alina commends how fast they finished the task, Melina shocks her by revealing they actually collected the leaves out in the forest. To blow her mind even more, Melina shows the Goblin Queen's stone and explains how Zio cleared an entire goblin village alone. Alina can't believe what she's hearing, so she tells Melina she has to contact her supervisor. A few minutes later, Alina takes Zio to meet Blazer, the guild master, who is equally shocked after hearing everything. When he asks to see the magic stones they obtained, Melina gives them to him, and after a thorough examination, Blazer confirms they're the real deal. But thinking it's some April Fool's stunt, Blazer asks again if they really did annihilated the goblins. Melina admits she was absolutely useless and that Zio did all the work, while Zio, who is getting fed up with all the interrogation, insists they check his guild card if they still doubt him. Blazer does exactly that, and his eyes widen after confirming the records. So when he asks Alina for the quest reward, Melina explains that because it's a B-rank quest and Zio is only F-rank, he gets just half, which still comes out to a ridiculous 18 million gold coins. Wasting no time, the guild master orders Melina to hand Zio his winnings, which she does. Later that evening, Zio gives Melina 3 million gold coins from the money, which surprises her since she was just a useless burden. But Zio tells her she wasn't totally useless, since she provided useful intel about the goblins. His words of encouragement, combined with the crypto money she just received, send Melina into a state of ridiculous excitement, so she repeats her earlier vow to stick with him for life. Meanwhile, as they chat, some suspicious chick with premium melons is busy spying on them. It's been 10 days since the Goblin Queen's subjugation, and since then, Zio has been unable to get another quest with a large reward. But as he gets to the entrance of the guild that day, he sees people gathered and yapping endlessly, which makes him wonder what the commotion is about. As he gets closer, he overhears some guys saying the mutilated corpse of an adventurer was found the night before near an inn. The rumor claims the victim was a young adventurer girl, and the news freezes Zio's blood on the spot. He finds it disturbing, so he immediately enters the guild to warn Melina to be careful. But when he gets inside, he runs into Alina, who immediately asks him to follow her. She leads him deeper inside, where he finds Blazer sitting with some hottie who introduces herself as Ubenta, the vice master of the guild. Blazer apologizes for the sudden meeting, but says there's a situation that needs to be resolved. He gets straight to the point and asks Zio where he was the night before. Zio is surprised by the question, but he calmly answers that after finishing his quest, he went straight to his dorm. Blazer continues the interrogation, asking if he left his dorm at any point, but Zio says no and explains that he stayed in his room and even chatted a bit with the head of the dorm. Getting sick of the pointless question and answer session, Zio insists on leaving, saying he has something important to do with Melissa. But Blazer freezes the moment Zio mentions Melissa's name like it's nothing, and asks if Zio is completely clueless about what's going on. Before Zio can ask what's going on, Blazer reveals that Melina was murdered the night before. The news hits Zio so hard it nearly gives him a heart attack, but Blazer urges him to calm down and listen. When he does, Blazer explains that Melina was unalived at midnight the previous day, and they found her corpse in a small alley near an inn. He further mentions that her remains were found in a horrible state, and they suspect the motive might be the large sum of money Zio gave her days ago. Having heard enough, Zio stands to leave, but Blazer tries advising him not to move around alone, suspecting that the murderers might come after him too. But Zio angrily assures him that if they do, he'll cut off their dingleberries and feed them to the vultures. After leaving the guild, Zio immediately heads to the alley where Melina was murdered, and when he spots a bloodstain on the ground, he assumes it must be where she was clapped. Right there on the spot, he casts a dark spell that revives spirits and makes Melina's ghost appear before him. With her apparition standing in front of him, he asks if she can speak, but Melina is stunned to see him and even more shocked to see herself back among the living. However, when she finally realizes she's just a ghost, Zio explains that he used a special spell from his dark magic to temporarily bring her soul into the world, and that only he can see her. When Melissa demands to know why he would even something like that, Zio explains that he needs to find whoever is responsible for unaliving her and make them pay. When he asks if the murderer was a guy or a girl, Melina says it was a guy, but adds that the busty baddie from earlier was the dude's commander. Since there isn't enough time to go on a full search for the murderous vixen and her gang, Melina suggests using an information broker, but warns it might be expensive. However, Zio reminds her that he's loaded and says they need to see the broker right away. Later that night, they enter a bar downtown, where Melina shows Zio a guy drinking alone who happens to be the information broker. When Zio walks up to him, the man instantly gets hostile, warning that the bar isn't meant for little brats like him. But Zio shuts his worthless mouth with 1,000,000 gold coins and says he needs intel on someone. When the man asks whose information he wants, Melina describes the girl's appearance to Zio, and Zio relays it to the broker. After listening, the intel guy reveals that the girl is a B-rank adventurer named Nasha, known in the streets as the Bloody Wicked Girl. When Zio asks how to track her down, the broker says she's always at the arena placing bets, and luckily, a huge tournament is scheduled for the next day. Zio thanks him for the information, but just as he is about to leave, the broker warns him that Nasha is a powerful fire mage, which Zio just shrugs off. So the next day, Zio and Melina head to the arena to find Nasha. When they arrive some hours later, Zio suggests they go to the bookmaker since the tournament has already ended. When Melina questions why the bookmaker instead of checking the arena itself, Zio explains that since Nasha likes to bet, that's exactly where she would be. When they arrive at the bookmaker, Nasha is nowhere in sight, but suddenly Melina spots the same guy from Nasha's crew who murdered her, so Zio suggests they tail the idiot. So they follow the dude to an alley where they suddenly bump into Nasha and the rest of her gang already waiting for them. When Zio approaches and asks Nasha about the murder, Nasha doesn't deny it and openly admits she and her gang were responsible. The ugly loser in her crew with the headscarf even confirms it, cracking jokes about how he mutilated Melina's body. He claims he chopped off her hands and legs right at the start, which only makes Zio even more furious. Zio then angrily demands to know why they murdered Melina, and Nasha confidently laughs, admitting it was simply because she saw Melina depositing a huge amount of gold coins at the warehouse guild and wanted the money for herself. Hearing her motive for clapping Melina only adds fuel to Zio's rage, so he activates a dark spell that lets him puppeteer his opponents. The moment Nasha's useless goons start rushing Zio with their blades, the spell triggers, forcing them to start chopping off their own legs and taking each other out. Nasha is shocked to her core as she watches her entire team get wiped out before her eyes. When she demands to know what he's done to her minions, Zio smugly explains that he used a high-level dark magic technique that allows him to control their bodies. Nasha thinks he's bluffing, but the moment she attacks with her blade, she realizes she doesn't have control over her own body either. Zio then grabs her by the hand, and as he places his other hand over her head, he chants a dark spell that separates her soul from her body. Realizing she's completely powerless, Nasha starts begging and apologizing for taking Melina's life. She even promises to do anything Zio wants, but Zio mercilessly tells her he can never forgive her. In the next second, Nasha's spirit is fully separated from her body, and she freaks out when she realizes she can see her own body standing in front of her. But just to complete the nightmare, Zio tells Nasha he's going to put Melina's soul into her now empty body, which he does right away. Nasha panics and begs Zio to return her soul to her body, but Zio refuses and explains that as a loose soul, she will only remain in this world for a couple of days before her spirit disperses and vanishes. But right after saying this, Zio starts to feel dizzy and suddenly blacks out. When he wakes up later, he sees himself lying on his bed in his room and is completely confused. But what confuses him even more is the plotful beast girl casually lying beside him. As he screams from the shock, the beast girl wakes up, rubbing her eyes with her fingers. When he asks if she's Melina, she confirms she is and explains that after he fainted, she was the one who brought him back to his dorm. Zio then asks about her beast ears and tail, and Melina explains that when she took out the ring on her finger, she magically transformed into what she is now. This makes Zio figure Nasha must have used some kind of perception magic. But Melina says now that she has Nasha's jizz-worthy body, she wants Zio to make her his slave. When Zio tries to argue, Melina explains that in Nasha's body, she's expected to work as a B-rank adventurer, and with zero combat skills, she'd get clapped instantly. She also reminds him he's responsible for her, since he was the one who put her in Nasha's body. To make her offer even juicier, she promises him a lifetime subscription to her OnlyFans content if he lets her become his slave. After considering all the creamy goodies he stands to gain, Zio finally agrees, which makes Melina very excited. Melina then suggests they meet a slave merchant to seal the slave contract with a bond. But Zio tells her not to worry, that he can do it himself, and then asks which part of her buttersmooth body she wants the seal. When Melina says she wants it placed on her curvy back, Zio engraves the slave seal there and says the only thing left is informing the dorm manager so he can approve them staying together in his room. But the moment they step out of the room together, they come face to face with Patty. Zio immediately enters panic mode and tries to explain why he has a girl in his room, but Patty is already screaming like a jealous ex, demanding to know who the heck Melina is. Melina then introduces herself, but the moment she says she's Zio's slave, Patty demands to know if they've been doing anything freaky in his room. Before Zio can answer, Patty accuses him of fooling her into thinking he wanted slaves for his village, when what he truly wanted was girl slaves for his 6 inches. After saying this, Patty touches the hilt of her sword, and Zio immediately thinks the girl wants to chop off his clapping machine, so he desperately begs her to chill. But Patty explains that after yesterday's incident, where a female adventurer was murdered, she now carries her sword everywhere for safety. The topic then shifts to the murder case, and Zio is relieved things is much calmer now. So he tells Patty that Melina is actually tied to the incident. Melina jumps in too, claiming she was attacked during the incident and lost her memories, but Zio saved her. She adds that because of this, she decided to become Zio's slave so she can be protected. Patty, obviously dying of jealousy, argues that the guild's protection is far better than anything Zio can offer. She feels Melina is trying to insult her intelligence, so she unsheathes her blade and insists on testing Zio's so-called strength. Zio freaks out, but while he tries explaining it's all a misunderstanding, Patty tells him excuses are useless now and immediately attacks with her sword. Zio manages to dodge her strike, and this makes Patty finally believe Melina might be telling the truth about Zio being a strong swordsman. Meanwhile, Zio cannot believe his crush just tried to cut off his biological weapon. But he eventually brushes it off and leaves with Melina to meet the dorm manager. After getting the dorm manager's permission for Melina to stay, a fresh problem pops up. figuring out how to get teacher Nurse to allow Melina to come along to the slave auction since she really wants to go. When Zio and Melina finally meet Nurse, Nurse immediately demands to know who Melina is. But after getting filled in, Nurse says she has no problem with Zio bringing a slave, but she wants to know if Melina is a permanent slave. When Zio tells her Melina is just a temporary slave, Nurse refuses, explaining that only permanent slaves are allowed to enter the auction. She goes on to explain that there are two types of slaves, permanent and temporary. Temporary slaves are under a contract with their master that can change, but permanent slaves sign a lifetime contract to serve a single master. Melina desperately says she is ready to become Zio's permanent slave, but everyone freezes in shock. This makes her ask Zio if he's uncomfortable with it and only intends to use and dump her, which Zio denies instantly. Seeing there's no way around it, Zio agrees and marks a permanent slave seal on Melina's back. Then they all head to the slave auction, where Zio successfully buys two slaves. A human girl who can cook and a beast boy with building and laboring skills. After the auction, Zio is happy with his accomplishment even though he is now back to being a brokey. But Melina is curious to know why he chose to be a slave merchant. After Zio explains his dream of using slaves to develop his hometown, Melina is moved by his generosity and revows to stick to him like glue for the rest of her life. Following that, Zio reasons that since he has used up all his funds to buy slaves, it's best they head to the guild to bag up. But showing up at the guild with Melina would mean dealing with Alina, the nosy receptionist, and explaining the entire Nasha mess. Zio is going nuts trying to figure out how to explain Melina's situation to Alina. Melina then suggests they come clean and try not to lie to her. She explains that Alina is a very cynical person who was super close to Melina, even to the point where they slept over at each other's houses, so it would be difficult to fool her. Zio agrees, but says it would be best if they don't mention that he was involved in the issue at all. Melina says that would be complicated since there's no way to explain how her soul got attached to Nasha's body without involving him. Even worse, she points out that another problem would be explaining how she's now his slave. When Zio suggests they tell Alina the same explanation they told Patty, Melina disagrees, arguing that Alina isn't as stupid as Patty and will definitely see through the lies. As frustration begins to settle, Melina tells Zio not to worry, assuring him she has a secret plan to convince Alina easily. When Zio asks what the secret plan is, Melina refuses to explain but assures him everything is already set and all that's left is heading to the guild. But the moment they enter the guild, Alina's cold stare says everything. She's furious Zio brought a new chick with him and demands to know who the girl is. Before Zio can explain, Alina angrily taps the table, saying it's been only a few days since Melina died and Zio is already shamelessly flaunting a new babe in the guild. She says this is why she can't trust a slave merchant, then demands again to know who the girl is. Just then, Melina interrupts, saying she will explain. She introduces herself as Nasha, and the second she mentions being Zio's slave, Alina blows up and accuses Zio of getting a new slave right after his partner died. She says all slave merchants are like human waste and calls Zio a heartless bum, while Zio stays silent, unsure how to react. Having reached her breaking point, Nasha tells Alina she knows the real truth behind Melina's death. Alina is shocked to hear this and immediately demands to know what she means by that. Nasha tells her to take a chill pill and then says she has something to say first before explaining anything. She tells Alina that the truth is, although the body is Nasha's, she is actually Melina. Hearing this, Alina loses all her brain cells and says she can't believe that kind of nonsense. She adds that the only way she'll believe it is if she's given some kind of proof. So, to convince her, Nasha starts listing every piece of gossip they used to share in private. She mentions the name of her fairy dog Pup, the sweets Melina used to eat in her house, and the kinds of foods she liked. This goes on for 2 straight hours, and Zio can only sit there in boredom, praying the interrogation eventually ends. What finally convinces Alina is Nasha revealing that she once called the guild master a brain-dead ogre. This shocks Alina out of her mind because nobody except Melina knows that, so she finally accepts that Nasha is really Melina. However, she still insists on knowing what truly happened. Melina then explains that the mastermind behind her death was Nasha and 3 C-rank adventurers, who are now with their makers. but she lies that she is completely unaware of the individual who carried out the soul transfer. When Alina asks if she really can't remember the person, Melina claims her brain hurts whenever she tries to recall. But there's still one unexplained issue. Alina wants to know why Melina became Zio's slave. Melina tries convincing her with a bunch of weak reasons, but seeing Alina's brain is too sharp to accept them, she finally agrees to tell her something real but insists on whispering it in her ear. As she does, Alina short-circuits after hearing that Zio is responsible for the soul transfer, but Melina begs her not to say it out loud. Now that everything is finally sorted out, Zio and Melina walk out of the guild, leaving Alina still shocked and mentally rattled by everything she's heard. But Blazer, after eavesdropping on the whole conversation, comes out and is more concerned about Alina calling him a brain-dead ogre, so he jokes that she's getting a pay cut for it. Some days later, Zio decides to eat out with Melina and Patty. After waiting a few minutes, Patty shows up looking like a snack, leaving Zio and Melina totally mesmerized by her beauty. She apologizes for keeping them waiting, but Zio tells her it's fine and says they should go eat. As they walk, Zio points out that Patty is wearing a skirt. This makes her blush with embarrassment, and when she asks if it looks weird on her, Zio compliments her, saying it actually looks good on her. When they finally arrive at the entrance of the restaurant some minutes later, they realize Zio hasn't booked any reservations, so Melina rushes inside to get them tickets for a table. With Zio and Patty now alone, Patty says she feels bad for making Melina go alone to get the tickets, but Zio tells her not to worry, explaining that Melina is hyper like that and has been eager to do something nice all day. They decide to stroll a bit, and while walking, Patty apologizes for drawing her sword against him days before when she first met Melina. She tries to explain why she did it, but Zio assures her it's fine, saying he didn't think much of it. While they talk, Patty gets distracted and starts staring at a doll inside a store. Zio notices her gawking at the doll like a little girl and is surprised that Patty also likes girly things. Just then, Melina returns, saying she has secured the tickets. But as they head inside the restaurant, Zio looks back at the doll Patty had been staring at earlier and is determined to do something about it. Inside the restaurant, Melina and Patty have a great time stuffing their faces with the delicious meal served. Patty even says she wouldn't mind eating there every day, while Melina claims she's super satisfied with the meal and thanks Zio for bringing them to such a nice restaurant. The warm and friendly vibe starts making Patty unexpectedly emotional, so she reveals that back in her village she was a loner with no friends, and Melina is the first friend she has ever had. Excited to hear this, Melina thanks her, saying it's an honor to be her friend, and then suggests they drink to their new friendship. After having a nice time at the restaurant, they head back to the dorm, where Patty thanks Zio for the amazing time and says she will be taking her leave. But just as she's about to go, Zio stops her and gives her the doll she had been staring at earlier. Patty is surprised that Zio bought the doll for her, but she's even more concerned about the price of the doll. But Zio smiles and tells her not to worry, joking that he isn't expecting her to pay him back. Patty instantly goes red like a tomato at his kindness, thanks him sweetly, and then hugs the doll close to her chest. But just then, a voice calls Zio's name. When he turns, he sees all the slaves he recently bought at the auction standing in front of him. One of the male slaves reminds him that today is the day they're supposed to leave for his village, and then thanks him for rescuing them. They all promise to give their best in the village, vowing to never forget the good Zio has done for them. Before departing, the blonde male slave thanks Zio again, saying they're lucky to have come across a slave merchant like him. But just as the carriage carrying the slaves heads off toward the village, another voice calls Zio's name from behind. This time when he turns, he's shocked to see Rise and Fam, the two girls from his village, standing in front of him. When Zio demands to know why they're there, Rise sighs in anger and reminds him of his promise before he left the village, to send them a letter once he arrived in the city. Clearly, Zio forgot all about it, and Rise says that after they waited 20 days with no letter, they couldn't sit around anymore, so they decided to journey to the city to find him. Rise suddenly gets pissed and jealous when she notices Patty and immediately demands to know what Zio is doing with such a pretty face. Zio then introduces Patty to the village girls as a friend from school, while he introduces Rise and Fam to Patty as his childhood friends. After the introduction, Patty tries to be friendly with the girls, but when she casually mentions that she and Zio are studying slave trading at the vocational school, Rise and Fam freeze on the spot. Rise immediately demands an explanation from Zio and wants to know why she also heard the slave from earlier calling him a slave merchant. Confused, Zio has no idea how to explain the situation. He doesn't know whether to come clean about his title or if they'll make a big deal out of it. But as he struggles to come up with an explanation, Melina immediately steps in to defend her master. The chicken brain only ends up making everything worse by revealing that she is Zio's permanent slave who lives, eats, and sleeps with him. This revelation instantly shatters both Rise and Fam's heart on the spot. So they both turn around and start walking away without saying a single word, refusing to hear anything Zio has to say. As the girls leave, Patty asks Zio if he isn't going to chase after them and try to explain. But the top G says no, he isn't a simp and the only thing he chases is the bag. Still, he says he knows exactly where the girls are going and will try to reason with them later. So later that day, Zio together with Melina head to the only restaurant in town Zio knows Rise and Fam would be. But to his shock, the village girls aren't there, and as he's wondering what to do next, he figures the smartest move is to contact an information broker again. But just then he notices a crowd gathered at the entrance of the restaurant Rise and Fam were supposed to be. When Zio walks inside, he immediately asks some random bozo what's happening. The guy explains there was a fight in the restaurant where two weird girls caused a huge scene, shouting that they needed to binge eat. Zio instantly realizes it must be Rise and Fam, so when he asks where the girls went after the chaos, the guy reveals that the girls were taken by a mediator. Zio then thanks him and leaves. Since mediators are people who get paid to resolve conflicts, Zio figures he'll need to make some money to bail the girls out. So when he reaches the mediators' headquarters a few hours later, he knows taking Melina inside would only spark a fight with the jealous village girls. So he asks her to wait outside, and surprisingly, Melina agrees without saying a word. The moment Zio steps inside, he sees Rise and Fam kneeling and tied up with two men standing in front of them. The girls shout his name the moment they see Zio, prompting the two pathetic-faced guys to turn and question who he is. Zio doesn't say a word. Instead, he pulls out a sack of gold coins to bail the girls out. Still, the lanky one demands to know who Zio is. Zio then lies that he's just some money lender who came to lend the girls bail money. But hearing this, the dumb girls immediately assume Zio wants to force them into taking a loan in exchange for a belly bump. But Zio ignores them, and when he reveals that the sack contains 300,000 gold coins for the bail, the short, bald one immediately accepts the money. But Rise shouts, telling Zio not to give the worthless piece of trash a single dime. She explains that these idiots just stuck their ugly noses into their business, and even though they didn't do anything, the fat baldy kept claiming they broke his bones. To make their deception convincing, the ugly bald dude starts complaining about the intense pain in his arm, which he claims was caused by the girls. While consoling him, his partner on suit explains that the wound is a serious one, and that covering the medical fees and compensation will cost at least 1 million gold coins. Hearing this, Zio can now tell something fishy is going on, while a furious Rise is already calling them crooks, arguing that what they're asking for now is way more than their initial demand. Fam joins in, explaining that what the morons originally asked for was 500,000 gold coins. Just by looking at their disgusting faces, Zio concludes that they must be two thieves working together. So he tells the bald ape that he would like to see the wound for himself, the one he keeps complaining about. But the meathead refuses, saying he can't bear to feel any more pain. Realizing there's no way the con artist will ever agree to show his wounds, Zio says he understands, and then asks the hairless guy to stay still while he casts healing magic on him. In an instant, something hits the dude like a bolt of lightning, and when he drops to his knees, he shockingly realizes that all the pain in his body is gone. This makes him forget his whole fraud act instantly, and starts celebrating the sudden disappearance of the back pain he suffered for years. Hearing him brag about his vanished back pain instead of the supposed arm injury, Zio is now completely convinced it's all a scam. Impressed, The moron on suit claps and commends Zio for using upper-class divine magic without even chanting. Then he asks Zio to come work for him, promising a sizable pay. But Zio ignores his stupid offer and points out that the arm injury should also be healed by now. So with the injury gone, Zio asks them to subtract the medical fees from the ransom money. The guy on suit agrees that since the injury is gone, there's no need for treatment anymore, but says he can only subtract 100,000 gold coins, bringing the new total to 900,000. Zio immediately argues the ridiculous ransom fees and shuts the entire deal down without thinking twice. But the guys warn that unless their demands are met, Rise and Fam will never be released. Just then, Melina walks into the negotiation, complaining that Zio is taking too long. The moment the dudes see her in Nasha's body, the big-headed Baldy accuses Nasha of stealing his money, while the lanky one in the suit is equally irritated by her presence. Zio instantly clocks that the real Nasha must have scammed these clowns back in the past. So he tells them Melina is his slave and she's suffering from amnesia. But the dudes refuse to believe his excuse and keep ranting that Nasha stole millions from them. The lanky guy then says he's willing to give Zio a discount by dropping the ransom for the girls to 800,000 gold coins, but only if Zio agrees to hand over Nasha. Zio refuses, insisting he isn't giving them a single dime and they aren't getting Nasha either. The lanky guy admits it's a pity, and as he snaps his fingers, armed thugs appear out of nowhere, surrounding the room and ready to inflict pain on Zio and the girls. The thugs threaten that anyone who goes against the agency will have to suffer the consequences. But as the lanky guy orders them to attack Zio, Zio drops all of them with lightning speed, shocking everyone. Seeing how fast Zio took down his men, the suit guy realizes Zio is no small fry and shouldn't be underestimated. Just then, two other crackheads show up as reinforcement. The guy in the suit calls them by their names, Rage and Mash, and says he has been waiting for them. As Zio examines these new threats, he notices one of them is wielding a melee weapon while the other is wearing some kind of magic item around his neck. Rage can't believe Zio was able to knock out all the other guys by himself, but he still brags that he'll teach Zio what a real fight is like. Realizing Rage might hit him with a surprise attack, Zio quickly grabs a weapon from the floor, ready to defend himself. But Rage suggests they take the fight outside, explaining that outside they can fight to their heart's content, and the lanky dude in the suit agrees, calling it a game. The lanky tells Zio that if he manages to beat Rage and Mash, he will forget about everything and let the girls go free. But if Zio fails, he'll take the girls as payment. When he asks what Zio thinks about the stakes of the game, Zio says he's fine with it and is ready to take him up on his offer. The girls start cheering for Zio to win, but Melina is a bit suspicious about Rage and Mash, as she feels she has seen them somewhere before. Before the match starts, Mash takes a step back, allowing Rage to fight but warns him not to underestimate the boy. As the lanky dude announces the start of the fight, Rage attacks with his melee, and after they clash, Zio is shocked to see his sword ruined, but he quickly uses magic to refine his blade again. At that moment, Melina, who has been using all her brain cells trying to remember where she's seen Rage and Mash before, finally figures it out. So she shouts that she remembers now and reveals that Rage and Mash used to be former S-rank adventurers. This pisses off Rage, who never expected anyone to uncover their real identities. But he doesn't deny it. He simply explains that he used to be an S-rank adventurer until he got kicked out of the guild for murdering another adventurer. He adds that Zio isn't a normal adventurer either and must be faking his identity. But when Zio tells him he's just a regular slave merchant, Rage loses it, thinking Zio is playing with his intelligence and attacks again. This time Zio fires off his magic, but Rage dodges effortlessly and laughs at how pathetic the attempt was. However, this convinces Rage that Zio must be some high-level sorcerer. Hearing this, the girls can't hide how excited they are to be side chicks of a great mage. When Melina says she's jealous of Rise and Fam for knowing Zio since childhood, Rise brags that she's not only his friend, but also knows everything about him, down to his favorite food. But while the girls continue to praise Zio, Rage overhears their little chatter and gets infuriated, thinking the girls are laughing at him. So he assumes a deadly stance, ready to end the fight once and for all. Seeing this stance, Mash, watching from the sidelines, is fully convinced the match is already over. Zio sees the stance and gets a bit worried, wondering what the guy has up his sleeves. As he's still trying to understand the stance, he spots a tiny needle shooting his way at a speed too fast for normal eyes to catch. This makes him understand the stance was simply a decoy meant to lead into the needle strike. So as he dodges the incoming needle by a hair's breadth, Rage is shocked, not expecting Zio to figure out his deadly move. But he's even more shocked when he realizes Zio has already closed the distance and kicks him in the face, knocking him out cold. With his partner now unconscious, Mash angrily attacks Zio with a powerful magic. But when Zio cancels it, Mash realizes he won't be able to handle Zio alone. But Rage, who has finally regained consciousness, assures him he isn't alone. Understanding now that Zio isn't some weak loser, Rage admits to Mash that they completely misjudged their opponent, and then asks for the usual boost. Mash then casts a body-strengthening spell on Rage, and with his body now fully enhanced, Rage attacks, trying to punch Zio at a very fast speed. But Zio dodges the strike, leaving Rage stunned. Still, Rage brags that the enhanced speed is their trump card, but Zio calls it a simple spell and tells him he can never beat him with something that basic. These words makes Rage mad, as he instantly thinks Zio is being cocky for dodging his first hit and vows to make him regret it. But to prove that body enhancement is nothing special, Zio uses the spell to enhance his own body, which shocks both Rage and Mash. Mash, realizing how dangerous things just got, immediately tries to warn Rage to get away from Zio. But before Rage gets the memo, Zio lands a powerful punch to his gut and his face, knocking him out cold. Seeing his partner lying unconscious, Mash can't believe his eyes and tries to attack Zio with magic. But Zio also punches him straight in the face, knocking him out as well. The baldy and the lanky guy, seeing how easily Zio dropped Rage and Mash, try to escape. But Zio summons dark chains to bind them and demands that the girls be released, since he clearly won the game as agreed. Terrified for his life, the lanky guy immediately agrees to write off all the debts and let the girls go. So Zio frees them from the chains, but before he leaves, he warns the men not to tell anyone about his overpowered abilities and threatens to snuff out their lives if they do. After being set free, Rise thanks Zio for saving them, but Zio just smiles and suggests they head home. However, just as they're about to leave, Fam turns toward Zio and says they want to know everything about Nasha and his slave merchant title once they get home. She warns him not to try tricking them or weaseling his way out of it. So later that day, at home over tea, Zio explains everything to Rise and Fam about attaching Melina's soul to Nasha's body and how the real Nasha was a notorious criminal. He also tells them that this is the reason he made her his slave, so he can protect her. Rise and Fam are surprised to hear the full story, and realizing they misjudged her, Rise apologizes to Melina for the harsh way she acted earlier. But Fam says there's still one thing she's confused about. She wants to know how Zio is so strong even though he's supposed to be a slave trader. Zio scratches his head, unsure of what to say, but eventually decides to reveal the whole truth to the girls. He shows them his identification card, and the girls freeze in shock when they see that apart from the slave trader title, Zio was also given the titles of Hero, Magic Emperor, and Great Sage. Seeing how amazing Zio is, the girls start blushing and gushing over him, and Nasha is even ready to clap him right there and then, saying she would love to have his babies. Rise and Fam sleep over in Zio's room, and when they wake the next morning, Rise is glad they did. Zio tells them he'll be heading to class and asks if they'll be okay staying in the room alone. Fam responds, telling him not to be overprotective and insists they'll be fine. Still, Zio says he's worried after what happened the previous day. When Rise asks when he'll be back from class, Zio replies that his class ends at noon, but after that, he'll take a request from the guild. The mention of the guild makes Rise question why he needs money so badly. But before Zio can respond, Fam cuts in, claiming the Rizzler needs cash to recruit more girls for his harem, embarrassing him instantly. However, when Zio explains that the reason he desperately needs money is to get slaves for the village, Rise is touched by his concern and thanks him for caring so much for their home. Fam then insists they'd also like to help, and realizing it would be pointless to argue, Zio agrees to let them help to an extent, and then head off to school with Melina. Later that afternoon, after school, Zio and the girls arrive at the guild to get a request. When Alina shows them all the available requests, Rise and Fam suggest going for the high-risk, high-reward ones. But when Zio tries explaining how things work, the girls insist they'll be helping too, while Fam reminds him they've been waiting all day to accompany him. Curious, Alina asks who the girls are, and Zio replies that they're his companions. When Zio asks if the girls can accompany him on his quests for the day, Alina instantly refuses, saying she can't allow it. The girls argue, insisting they're pretty strong, but Alina stands her ground, explaining that only adventurers can take requests, and if they want to accompany Zio, they'll have to register as adventurers. But Fam doesn't understand what Alina means and thinks she is doubting their strength. So, to prove herself, Fam walks up to some random guy and says she wants to fight him. She tells the dude that if he manages to beat her, she'll let him damage her backside with his instrument. The desperate loser instantly agrees, seeing this as his one chance to finally use his God-given wand. But in a single second, the weakling is completely destroyed by Fam, and Zio, seeing this, is stunned that the girls still remember all the training he gave them back in the village. Smiling, Fam asks Alina if that was convincing enough, and Alina agrees, saying she would let them accompany Zio on the quests. Sometime later, as they finally arrive at the quest location, Melina warns Rise and Fam to be careful no matter how strong they think they are. But Rise confidently tells her not to worry too much about them, and reminds her that Alina had earlier mentioned their strength was on par with a C-rank adventurer. Even at that, Zio insists they shouldn't let their guards down since the two of them basically have zero live combat experience. But Rise is overconfident and believes they're equal to the task. Suddenly, they're attacked by a chicken monster and Melina shouts, warning that it's a cockatrice. But Rise stays calm, confident in her so-called C-rank magic skills. Melina panics and tries warning her that the cockatrice is actually a B-rank demon beast, but Rise is already attacking with her magic. However, when her attempt flops harder than her pathetic face, she takes off running and screaming for help. So Zio steps in to help by unleashing a powerful magic that roasts in Chicken Monster at the spot. When the dust settles, Zio suggests they hurry up and eat the roasted chicken, but right then, they hear a rustle in the bushes. The sound startles them, making them wonder if another monster is close by. But instead, a pretty Latina dressed in knightly armor, accompanied by two ugly dudes, emerges from the bushes. The ugly brutes immediately demand Zio's group hand over the roasted chicken, but when Zio refuses, they unsheathe their swords, ready for a fight. But the girl, who seems to be their leader, orders them to put their swords away, reminding them she made it clear that no innocents are ever to be harmed. She then turns to Zio to apologize for her men's actions, and then introduces herself as Altina. When Zio questions who they are, Altina reveals that they are proud, noble thieves. Since it's the first time Zio has ever heard thieves call themselves nobles, he mocks them, which instantly provokes Altina's lackeys. But Altina calms her men down and then explains to Zio that they only recently became noble thieves. She shares that she originally started off as an adventurer, but was very slow to rise past B rank. Because of that, she wasn't sure whether to keep working as an adventurer or resign. But one day, while on a quest, she was suddenly attacked by a bunch of thieves. After managing to turn the tables and defeat them, she noticed that, for some reason, the title Bandit suddenly appeared on her identification card. So from that day on, she became the leader of the bandits. But since she never wanted to be a bandit, she decided to change the title to Noble Thieves instead. Still, Zio doesn't understand what a noble thief is supposed to do if not rob people. So Altina explains that, first of all, they came to the forest to restock their supplies and train. But their plan has always been to go against anyone who makes people suffer, like corrupt nobles, kidnappers, and most of all, slave merchants. Zio freezes in shock hearing that they attack slave merchants, but then figures that if he keeps his mouth shut, no one will know he's one. Zio then agrees to share the roasted chicken with Altina and her thief crew, but only on the condition that they don't interfere with his quest, and Altina accepts. But everything turns messy the moment Zio asks Melina to slice some meat for them, and she replies, "Yes, master," without thinking. At that instant, Altina immediately turns to Melina, and when she asks why she called Zio master, the airhead proudly spills everything, announcing that Zio is her master. Zio quickly tries to shut Melina up from revealing more, but the dummy just keeps yapping. Having heard enough, Altena draws her blade against Zio and orders her men to do the same. She declares she will never let a slave merchant live and immediately commands her goons to attack. But Zio activates a self-inflicting spell, causing the bozos to turn their own bodies into punching bags. Altena gets mad seeing her men beating themselves, so she angrily vows to personally take down Zio. But suddenly, she loses control of her hand, drops her weapon, and starts spanking her own puff cakes. She tries to stop, but her hand keeps moving on its own. Confused and embarrassed, she shouts at Zio, demanding to know what he's doing to her, and Zio calmly says he's disciplining her for being naughty. After disciplining her to his satisfaction, Zio explains that he became a slave merchant to free slaves. When Altena asks what he means, Zio explains his ambition, and once she understands, she apologizes for misunderstanding him. Zio tells her it's fine, and then offers to share his delicious roasted meat with her and her loser crew. This excites Altena and her men, so she thanks Zio for his generosity and promises never to forget the debt of gratitude. After taking their share of the meat, Altena and her crew bid Zio and the girls goodbye. But while leaving, Altena thinks about the spanking she received from Zio, which makes her blush. When one of her men notices and points out how red her face is, Altena gets embarrassed and tries to hide her flushed cheeks. But deep down, she wishes Zio would punish her like that one more time. The following week, Zio checks the budgets and expenses for purchasing slaves and daily necessities, and realizes he doesn't have anywhere near enough money to smoothly run the operations. So while heading to the guild that day, Melina notices he isn't happy, and when she asks what's wrong, Zio explains that they're broke and need cash urgently or they'll be eating sand soon. He says he's trying to figure out why they're even broke after working so hard. Melina then reveals that Rise and Fam have been buying a ridiculous amount of books lately, some on how to effectively increase slaves, others on finance management. Even though Zio is pissed that the girls are responsible for his bankruptcy, he reasons that since they're studying to improve the village's fortune with his money, it's still fine because everything is part of the goal anyway. When Zio arrives at the guild later, Alina excitedly informs him that she got some great picks from the day's requests. Zio is glad to hear this, so he asks her to give him a request that will last the whole day with a decent payout. Alina says there's no problem and hands him a paper with a high-reward request. However, she warns that there's a condition attached, and the condition is that he must pass some kind of exam before being eligible to take the quest. Melina is eager to see what the request is about, but as she leans closer, she presses her pointy jigglies against Zio's hand, causing him to freak out. Alina then informs Zio that the exam for the request will be carried out at the trial ground, and the client's name is Palastes. Hearing this, Zio instantly clocks that Palastes must be Patty, so he tells Alina the client is an acquaintance of his. Just then, Melina interrupts, saying there's a problem. When Zio asks what it is, she tells him they need to hurry because the request is about to expire. So Zio and Alina immediately runs out of the guild, heading to the trail ground. But when they get there, they see Patty standing over a couple of defeated weak adventurers. When Patty sees them, she asks why they're there, so Zio explains that he saw her request at the guild and thought he'd take the trial on. This makes Patty laugh as she reminds him she has already witnessed his strength firsthand before, so there's no need for a test. But just then, one of the defeated adventurers lying on the ground suddenly stands up and angrily insists that Zio must take the test, since that's what the request form demands. When Patty tries explaining she already knows how strong Zio is, the douche face shuts her up, insisting they'll test Zio themselves if she refuses. Zio, realizing he has no choice but to fight, promises to beat the guy so badly his Face ID will never unlock his phone again. And in the blink of an eye, the guy is knocked out again. When Zio then asks for the details of the request, Patty tells him that the job is to hunt down human traders and slave merchants who have been hired to enslave and sell a large part of her elven tribe. Seeing how large-scale the mission is, Zio suggests it would be better for her to approach the government, but Patty refuses, explaining that the relationship between her hometown and the city is far from cordial. So when Zio asks if she has any plan for how they can start the mission, Patty admits she doesn't know much about the targets. She says they're lacking information and wishes they could find someone who knows a lot about human traders and slave merchants. Zio's mind immediately goes to Altina and her group, so he tells Patty that he knows someone who might be able to help and that he'll arrange a meeting. But the problem now is that he's clueless about where to find Altina and her ridiculous band of noble thieves. When Melina suggests they make use of the informants at the bar like usual, Zio immediately hesitates, saying he hates going back to such a shady place ever again. However, since there's no time, he says they'll have to find Altina and her group using whatever method they can. Just then, the hot teacher Nurse bumps into them, asking why they're in such a hurry and offering to help with anything that might be worrying them. When Zio hesitates, Nurse shyly tells him not to look down on her just because she's a teacher, and says there might be something she knows that could help. Since she keeps insisting, Zio decides to tell her about Patty's guild request and their need to find someone who has information related to bandits and their activities. But when he asks if she knows anything about Altina and her band of noble thieves, Nurse instantly does a spit take with her tea. This makes Zio suspect she might know something about Altina, so as he presses her for information, Nurse tries to dodge the topic. But eventually she says she can at least draw them a detailed map showing where they can find Altina. So she gets a pen, draws the map, and hands it to Zio. Zio thanks her, but Nurse says she still wonders how Altina is doing. When Zio tells her Altina is now the band leader of a group of noble thieves, Nurse smiles and says she's glad Altina is all right. Zio is curious to know if Nurse is somehow related to Altina, but Nurse immediately avoids the question, saying he'll find out when he gets to Altina's location. Zio then thanks her, and as he follows the map, it leads him straight to a tavern where Melina sees chicken drumsticks and immediately gets entranced by the sight. Meanwhile, Zio and Patty feel a little uncomfortable with how crowded the tavern is. But just then, Altina spots Zio and excitedly rushes over to him. She really wants to know why he came looking for her. But when she asks if he came to give her dump a second smacking, Zio immediately freaks out and says he came for something else entirely. So Altina suggests they grab a seat and talk. Over a plate of chicken drums, Altina is curious how they managed to find her location. When Zio tells her they got the intel from a teacher, Altina is stunned. She immediately suspects it must be Nurse, and Zio confirms it. When Zio asks if she and Nurse know each other, Altina shyly avoids the details and only says they used to visit the same tavern. But when Zio mentions that Nurse burst out laughing when he told her Altina is now the leader of a band of noble thieves, Altina gets embarrassed and annoyed at the same time. Getting down to business, Zio explains the reason why he came. He says they're looking for slave merchants with a lot of elf merchandise and would appreciate any information Altina can give them about these slave merchants. Altina admits they're also planning to launch an attack against those same merchants. Patty gets excited hearing this and insists they immediately clamp down on them. But Altina is confused about who she is, and when she asks Zio who Patty is, Zio introduces Patty as his friend from school and the owner of the request to free the elves. Altina figures Patty must be a noble, so she shakes her hand and introduces herself. After that, she pulls out a detailed map showing the route the slave merchants transporting elves are most likely to use. She explains that the best time to attack is when the traders manage to break through to the east, and they can hit them when they reach the valley. Patty and Zio are impressed with the plan, so Zio asks if they can participate. Altina gets excited hearing this and tells Zio he's more than welcome to join. She then goes deeper into the details, explaining how they'll attack. Since her intel says the traders might be using 10 carriages, she will lead her best men to attack from the front, while Zio and Patty take care of the ones in the center. After that, she'll bring the rest of her men and close in from the rear, when the merchants are more focused on the attacks coming from the front and center. She adds that during the confusion, Patty will release and protect the prisoners. Zio thinks it's a perfect plan and believes they'll have no issues. But Altina angrily pouts when she realizes Zio truly didn't come to drum on her bunda, making her sigh in disappointment. However, Zio is more concerned about the mission, and with the slave merchants' location already confirmed, he says they should head out at dawn the next day. So the following morning, Zio and Melina arrive at the planned location to see Altena and her squad already there, hyped and pumped for the mission. Patty is the last person remaining, and after a short while, she arrives, looking pretty and dressed for the occasion. Zio and Melina can't stop staring at her, and Melina feels they should have dressed for the occasion too instead of looking like beggars. Just then, Altena announces that the carriage to take them to the valley has arrived, and they need to start making their way there. Everyone immediately enters the carriage, and the journey to the valley begins. Meanwhile, inside the carriage, Zio and Patty discuss how Altena managed to turn worthless bandits into noble thieves, a feat they find pretty remarkable. A few hours later, they finally arrive at the valley, so Altena asks everyone to exit the carriage and get ready. When they do, she instructs them to head to their assigned positions and then goes over the plan once again. But as everyone takes their positions, Zio ends up stuck beside two ugly losers who choke him with their disgusting body odor. When Zio tells them to back off, begging that he is about to pass out, they refuse, insisting they must keep him alive. Just then, one of them notices the slave merchant carriages coming from afar and says Patty and Melina's squad are already striking from the center. But Zio wonders why Patty is attacking all of a sudden without waiting for Altena's signal. So the mushroom head explains that, according to a message he just received, they heard a little girl screaming inside one of the carriages. So Patty didn't waste any time jumping straight into action without waiting for orders. Feeling that Melina and Patty might need all the help they can get, Zio immediately orders the two stinking, frog-faced guys with him to go support the girls while he takes care of the merchants at the rear. When Zio gets to the rear of the carriage, he sees two merchants who immediately call him a brat and demand to know what he's doing there. But Zio doesn't say a word, he just claps the idiots with his knee. Meanwhile, at the front, the big guy from Altena's squad and the rest of the men have already taken down all the merchants there and are ready to join Altena at the front. At the center, Patty has also taken down the merchants, and when she opens one of the carriages, she sees the little elf slave girl. The moment Patty tells the girl they came to save her, the little one bursts into tears and runs straight into her arms. Meanwhile, Zio finishes off the remaining merchants by attacking them with sharp shards of wind blades. After wiping off all of them, he waits, hoping that Patty and the rest have already freed all the slaves. But out of nowhere, a heavy, sinister aura hits him and knocks his balance off. As he wonders what this terrible feeling might be, he hears a deep, croaky voice from inside the carriage. Before he can figure out what that disgusting voice is, he's shocked to see a massive Goliath step out of the carriage holding an elf girl in one hand. Zio immediately suspects this titan must be the boss of the slave merchants. But while trying to figure that out, the Goliath attacks with his massive weapon while still holding the unconscious girl in his hand. But as Zio effortlessly evades the attack, the big guy commends how well he moves, but in Zio's mind, he's thinking about how slow the giant brute is. So he tries to use magic to finish him instantly, but the giant immediately puts his massive blade to the girl's throat and threatens to slice it if Zio uses magic. At that moment, the unconscious girl speaks, begging them to stop the mindless slaughter, and Zio is surprised, realizing she isn't unconscious at all. She was just closing her eyes. Zio starts to ponder how best to attack this freak, and after thinking briefly, he decides to use body-strengthening magic to finish the giant off in one blow. However, he knows he must tread with caution so he doesn't expose the hostage to danger. So, as the monster attacks a second time, aiming to slice Zio in two like butter, Zio leaps into the air and strikes his chest with a powerful karate-style slam. The beast immediately coughs blood, drops the girl to the ground, and collapses instantly. Just then, the rest of the team comes rushing over, asking if Zio is all right. When Zio tells them he's fine, Patty informs him they've successfully secured all the captives without any issues, and with all the bandits dead, they've won the victory. Shortly afterwards, while the team tends to the slaves, the girl Zio saved from the giant approaches him to express her gratitude. But Zio tells her it's fine, saying he's just glad she's unharmed. She replies that it's kind of him and then introduces herself as C. Zio notices that while she talks, her eyes are unusually closed. So when he asks her about it, she gets embarrassed and says she wasn't expecting him to be so direct. She then explains that she can actually see just fine, but she chooses to keep her eyes closed to simulate not being able to see. She says that by doing that, she's free from constantly observing the flow of magic in the world. Zio is confused about what she means, so when he asks if she only sees in mana, C confirms it and explains that she can see the color and brightness of magic. She says the reason she keeps her eyes closed most of the time is to avoid perceiving people in terms of their magic rather than who they really are. When Zio asks if she can see his mana, C says yes and explains that everyone has a basic color to their mana. But in his case, she can see 4 colors, 3 of which are bright and overwhelming, while the last one is soft and welcoming. Zio is beyond shocked that there exists someone who can perceive other people's mana. When he asks what kind of being she is, C drops a bomb by revealing that even though she is a slave now, she used to be a holy maiden and was once called the Saint of Kindness and Love. Hearing this, Zio is stunned and starts to ponder deeply. He reasons that if C finds out about his hero status, she'll drag him to the church where all her worshippers will start treating him like some kind of god. So to avoid that disaster, he quickly tells her they need to return her to her church, but C declines and insists on staying by his side. Will Zio add C to his harem list? Comment slave merchant if you're hyped to see what happens next in part 2. If you enjoyed this video, drop a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, as always.